So the first thing that you should do is prepare your ingress paper and tape it to your drawing board. I also wanted to say that this tutorial is available in real time on my Patreon and on my Pastel School, so you can check it out on both websites. But for now, I will just go on with the narrative. So I'm using willow charcoal to actually sketch out the cherries, and I am trying to see the proportions that I see on the image and trying to get those right. So I am kind of visually measuring my cherries and then just adding the proportions onto the drawing. First, it's easier to actually draw with choppy motions instead of creating those rounded shapes. So you can always fix that later, especially because of charcoal. So willow charcoal is a very nice medium that can be erased very, very easily. So don't be afraid to make mistakes with it. I am sketching out the cherries, and as you see, even with the finger, I can delete the lines that I don't need and then clean it up with the kneaded eraser. If you don't know what's a kneaded eraser, it's kind of a pliable eraser that doesn't damage the paper and is amazing when working with soft pastels and charcoal. The thing that I do is I am adding also the highlights on my cherries, and then after I'm done with the sketch, I gently tap the drawing with the kneaded eraser just to take away those harsh lines, and when I will be putting the pastels over my drawing, the lines will disappear altogether because pastels layer very well over the charcoal. Then I'm starting with the neutral color. This is my cherry color, and it's actually very difficult to find decent red in soft pastels. So I have different sets of soft pastels from different brands, but the dark reds or very juicy reds, especially cherry reds, seriously, that's a problem to find. But yeah, I'm trying out the pastels, as you can see, also on the paper that is the same color. It's the same paper. It's the ingress paper. And before I apply any colors onto the cherries, I test them on the paper just to see how they look. I'm starting to add juicier, brighter colors, and then with dark blues, I am starting to add shadows as well. Pay attention that the cherries, they have this reflected light from the white surface that they're standing on, and we will be adding that with light violets as well. So I'm always cleaning my hands with wet wipes just to make sure that I don't contaminate my colors. As you know, probably, that if you mix very light colors with very dark ones, you can create a lot of mud and pastels, and it will make our cherries look as if they've gone bad. So now I'm always also cleaning up the drawing with my kneaded eraser, just to make sure that the edges of my cherries are very defined, because I don't want to add any background to this drawing. I just want it to be more of a illustration, more of a botanical illustration kind of style here. And now with blues and violets, I'm adding the shadows. So I wanted to go for kind of colorful shadows here. I really like how colors look in the shadow areas, and maybe sometimes I exaggerate, but that's just kind of my approach to it, so my style. And again, I'm coming back to juicier colors, and I'm adding the reds over the lighter areas. As you see, I don't touch the area where the highlight is going to be, as I want my brightest highlight to have a very, very bright appearance, so I want it to pop. With the same violet, I'm going to add also the shadows that are the cast shadows from the cherries, and as the light is coming from top left, we will see the cast shadow at the bottom of our cherries. And remember that every time, everywhere where the object touches the surface, it's going to be the darkest area. So the closer to us the object, the darker the colors will get, and every time you see occlusive shadows, that is where the object touches the surface, it's going to also be very dark. So I'm also adding some ochre just to kind of tone down the shadows, because I don't want them to be completely violet, so not going completely crazy with colors here. Again, working on the shadows, adding the violets inside my reds. Once again, I said that it's very difficult to find that dark red that would actually make our cherries look very juicy, so I'm kind of mixing the colors here. And here, where the cherries are actually kind of staring at each other in between the cherries, you can see that they reflect in each other and the color is actually darker. So we have kind of a shadow and reflected light forming there. this is going to help us also to create that shape of the cherry and make it look three-dimensional. Again, I'm moving through the colors, and here I'm also using the color shaper because I want, as I said, my edges to be crisp, and with the finger I am risking to actually blur everything too much out. After I'm done with the shadows, I am going to fix the edges, as I said, always with the kneaded eraser. It's very nice as it does not ruin the paper, and you can continue layering your pastels over the tooth of the paper. And now it's time to go to the stalks, and actually I'm using different greens here together with yellow greens because I want the cherries to actually look juicy. So try not to go into muted colors when you're drawing fruit, because the brighter the colors, the juicier your fruit is going to look. And I am trying to create very thin lines. If you're having trouble creating very thin lines here on the stalks, you can use pastel pencils easily with colors that are similar to the ones that I'm using in the video, or you can use a very sharp pastel. Just break your pastel in two and you will have a very sharp tip. So usually I draw with the side of pastel, but when it comes to creating these thin lines, then it's the very tip of the pastel. And then I'm adding some shadow on the tip there and blending it all out with the color shaper. Once again, the color shaper here is very good because it allows me to create the smooth appearance of the stalk, and at the same time I don't risk of smudging the colors too much. On the leaf, on the other hand, I can smudge the colors with my finger, and I'm adding different colors together with the same violets that I had in my cherry, just to kind of bring the image all together, because I don't want my leaves to seem as if they're kind of an extraneous object in the picture. So I want them to be a part of the image. So I need the same colors that I have in the cherries to be present in the leaves as well. Then I'm going back to my cherries again, blending and removing the pastel from outside of the edges. And now I'm strengthening the shadows that are inside the place where the stalk actually attaches to the cherry. Now it's time to add those highlights and reflected lights. So I'm starting with the violets and blues with the reflected lights that come off of the white surface that the cherries are standing on. And I am looking at the shape of that reflected light, and here you have to be careful with the shape and get it just right, as we have the cherries that are a slightly distorted ball if you look at them, and here the reflected light is going to show us that shape of our cherry. So it's very important to get the lights exactly how you see them. So this is going to give more realism to our cherries. So I'm looking at all the places where I see the reflected lights, and before I add any light colors, so I'm going to be using a very light blue, it's not white, it's going to be a very light blue, I'm adding violets into the highlighted areas. So when my light blue mixes together with the violet, it's going to create a more interesting highlight color than if it were just the light blue on its own. First thing I do is I'm going to blend this in, and then I will add more highlights over the top. So I'm trying to get that shape right. And if you go over your shadow areas, don't worry, you can always, in pastel, it's such a wonderful medium that you can always correct anything that goes wrong. So I'm adding more shadows just to make that cherry come slightly more forward. So the place that is closest to us, where we see the core shadow of the cherry, is going to be the darkest. So I'm adding more dark blues in there. Still working on the shadows and gently blending everything together, and you can see that now I'm getting kind of close to the cherry color. But as I said, if you don't have the dark reds, don't worry, you can always do what I have done here and use color blending, so use reds and blues and violets together. And with my color shaper, I'm going to blend in those areas that I see, that where I see the highlight, and I don't manage to actually blend them with my finger because they are too thin and narrow. And I'm also adding the same colors into my leaf, and here you can add some of that red of the cherry into the leaf right in the area where the cherry is kind of closest to the leaf, to kind of show a bit of that color reflecting in our leaf as well. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. As I said, you can find the full version of it on my Patreon and on my Pastel School. So do check those out. I will leave the links in the description. And for now, I wanted to say thank you so much for watching, and I will be seeing you very soon in future tutorials. Thank you. Bye.